Hi, this is Dr. Green, and welcome to Calculus 2. We are going to start our journey here in Chapter 6 by looking at inverse functions. The key idea with inverse functions is that opposites undo each other. And you've used this idea before in solving equations. So if you had an addition in an equation, you would undo that with subtraction. And a multiplication would be undone with division. So opposite operations. So our goal here is we want to find the antiderivative of 1 over x dx. So remember that we had antiderivative formula for all other values of n. The antiderivative of x to the n was x to the n plus 1, divide by that new exponent n plus 1, and plus a constant. Well, this didn't work with n is negative 1. So that's going to kind of be in the back of our mind. We're going to attack that later on. So let's look at an example here. You're renting a car while you're on vacation. You've got a flat charge to start of $75. That includes 200 miles. For each additional mile over the 200, you're charged 25 cents. So price or cost here is a function of distance. It depends on distance. So to start off, we want to know what is the price for 250 miles and 300 miles. So if our distance, we'll use d for distance, is 250 miles, then our cost here, we'll use c for cost, is going to be that $75 to start plus 25 cents a mile. And then the additional miles are, if we do 250 miles, 200 are included, so that's just 50 additional miles. So 0.25 times 50. If you plug that in the calculator, you'll get 8750. Now, if our distance is 300 miles, then our cost will be the $75 flat fee, and then 25 cents a mile, and then we've got 100 additional miles. So that's 300 minus 200. Plug that in the calculator, you'll get $100. Even. So part B, now we want to find a formula here for cost as a function of distance. So we'll write that as C equals f of d. So, well, we've got that $75 base fee here. So our cost is going to equal $75. And then in general, we are going to add 25 cents a mile times the number of miles over the 200. So if d is our distance, number of miles here, then we're going to subtract the 200 that are already included in the price. That's going to be our extra or additional miles. And we multiply that by the 0.25. Now we can simplify this a bit if we want to. We can multiply that 0.25 in. So this will be 75 plus 0.25d. And then 0.25 times negative 200, so a quarter of 200 is 50, so minus 50. So this will be 0.25d. And then 75 minus 50, 25. So there's our simplified function. Now part C, they ask us what distance here costs 125 or 135. So there they are giving us the cost. So we know cost equals 125. We want to know what is the distance. Well, here's our cost function. So we're going to set our cost, which is 0.25d plus 25 equal to that 125. So let's go ahead and subtract 25 on both sides. Solve this for d. So these guys cancel. We are left with 0.25d is equal to 100. And then we will undo that multiplication by dividing on both sides by 0.25. So this is going to give us a distance here of 100 100 divided by 0.25. That's 100 divided by a fourth. It's the same as multiplying by 4. So that's 400. So a distance of 400 miles is going to cost $125. So let's do it again here with 135. So if our cost is 135, we are again going to set that equal to the 0.25d plus 25. We're going to subtract 25 on both sides. That'll leave us 110 on the left equals 0.25d. And then divide both sides by 0.25, which is going to leave us 440. So it's multiplying by 4. So here then our distance is going to be 440. Now that's total distance, not the additional distance. Here the additional distance would be 200. Here the additional distance would be 240. And then part D, we want to know, find a formula for distance as a function of cost. So if we can find that formula, write it like this: D equals F with a -1 exponent. And that doesn't mean reciprocal, that means inverse function. So the function that undoes our cost function here, it's going to do the opposite. So it's a little bit hard from just these two calculations to try and determine what that formula is off the top of your head. However, if you think about what this function does to what you put in, it first multiplies the distance by 0.25. So multiply by 0.25. And then second, it adds 25. So the inverse function ought to undo these operations. So it's going to do the opposite operation in the opposite order. So let's take a look here. Our inverse function then should undo the adding 25. So first step is going to be subtract 25. And then it's going to undo multiplying by 0.25. So second step should be to divide by 0.25, which is dividing by 1/4. So that's, let's go ahead and start here then. So D is going to be a function of cost. So our distance is going to equal, we're going to start with that cost, and we're going to subtract 25, so minus 25. And then we're going to divide the answer by 0.25. But then dividing by 0.25, this is c minus 25, divide by 1/4. That's the same thing as multiplying by 4. So this is 4 times c minus 25. And if we multiply that in, we can simplify. And this will be 4 times c, and then 4 times -25 minus 100. So 4c minus 100. And that is our F inverse of C. So with the inverse function, you'll put in cost values and you'll get out the corresponding distance. So if we were to take this 125 cost and plug that in, the distance to go with that would be 4 times the 125 and then minus 100. So 4 times 125 is 500, and minus 100 is 400. And look, that's what we got here. So that is indeed our inverse function. Reverse operations, reverse order. So the inverse function undoes the original function.